Why Canada needs 1 million more homes built today. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Vancouver Life Real Estate Podcast. Today, we felt it was so important that we give you guys a macro picture of what's happening in the housing industry across Canada, because it's not just pronounced in Vancouver, it is pronounced across the entire country. Furthermore, you should have a good understanding of what housing supply and prices look like going into a federal election, so you can tell whether or not what these people are trying to promise you is even possible or plausible. We've heard the government come out, depending on which party you're listening to, will come out and they're going to build between 500,000 and 1.4 million homes anywhere between the next 3 to 10 years. I find that incredible, considering it takes 8 months to order a couch right now. Anyhow, that being said, let's take a look at nationally what's going on with sales. Dan, why don't you lead off with that?
Yeah, thanks. It's no wonder that housing is, of course, front and center here on these political platforms because of the reasons we're going to outline today. This includes sales, right? So home sales have fallen about 25% from March. March was obviously the peak, and yes, it was the peak nationally. It's quite incredible to note how equal Vancouver and Toronto operate from one another, even though they're 4,000 kilometers apart. And the rest of Canada, actually, quite this year was very similar. So 25% less sales from March. That includes about an 8.5% drop from just last month. Now, big picture, even with that decline, we're nationally home sales about 10% above prior peak levels, including 2016, 10% higher. That is significant. So, again, if it feels slow out there, it's only because we have the March reference, which was just absolutely the most epic sales month ever recorded.
Yeah. And I mean, that obviously had an impact on supply. Now, if you've heard the most recent Vancouver Life podcast on Vancouver, you'll know that supply is low, but new listings actually fell 8.8% month over month. This is the lowest since the onset of the pandemic. Oh my God.
Yeah, when you're losing almost 9% of your inventory in 1 month, that speaks to extreme issues. Let's be honest. It's extreme solutions need to be found, and found quick, because that new listings falling that 9%, it's resulted in inventory at a all-time 20-year low. It's down 23% year over year, which is a massive number. But check this out. Inventory is down 60% from 2015. That's only 6 years ago. It's only 6 years ago. So that's, if you want to average that out, that means inventory is disappearing at the rate of 10% per year consistently for 6 years.
That's staggering. And to give you guys some perspective, in 2015, we had 250,000 active listings. 6 years on, we're at 110,000. And I can guarantee you the price of that 110,000 available active listings is far higher than the 250,000 that was available in 2015.
That's right.
And the other thing that I really want to impress upon people right now is when the government comes out and says, hey, we're going to build, whether it's 250, 300, 400,000 homes a year, or repurpose them, or whatever it is they're going to do, we're talking about a systemic supply issue that has been a decade in the making. And I'm not convinced that any emergency solution like building 1.4 million homes is not even possible. So be very careful if you're choosing a political party based on the promises you're hearing with housing, because there's material supply shortages. The price of materials has gone through the roof. I don't know, like I said at the start, if you've been trying to order any kind of furniture in the last year, God knows when it's going to show up, right? And why would that be any different between labor shortages, materials, developers that are the ones who would actually build these units, what about all the stuff they've bought over the last 6 years? Why would they not develop the property that they've already got? Why do they have to take on the new projects that the government wants? Again, there's autonomy. We live in a capital society, right? So I just don't know how any of this rolls up and makes sense. I just think what we're seeing here is a result of neglect at the federal level. And I mean, let's not even talk about immigration, because that's just going to continue to further and deepen this issue.
Yeah, it's fascinating to note that, like, right before the pandemic, if you want to look at the metric of like months of remaining inventory, it was at 4 months, which at the time was a record low. Since the pandemic, that has dropped to 2.3 months of existing inventory. So yeah, like Ryan touched on, all these developers that have their plans to build moving forward, the government wants to kind of say, okay, well, we want to build affordable housing. Do you think you're going to be able to pull the trades from these developers to work at a discount, or buy supplies at a discount, or
get everything? Get them?
There you go. Right. So yeah, again, we all want it to happen, but it seems like there's a lot of lip service being given without a lot of sort of reality behind it.
Totally. And I mean, when you've got 400,000 people a year planned on coming here, 400,000, we're on pace to hit 401,000 permanent residents this year, right? We've got 110,000 available units.
Sorry, it's not funny. It's just so unbelievable. All I can do is laugh. It's anything but funny, but you're absolutely right. Like, think of it like that. Canada's literally putting 400,000 new permanent residents into our country this year, and yet nationally there's only 110,000 homes available today.
And I would say, you're not all 400,000 are going to buy.
Of course.
But even if it's 25% of that number, that's what's available right now. And that doesn't count for the people that currently live here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to put a tremendous pressure on the rental market too. That's what's going to come next.
It's already happening. Yeah. We're seeing rental rates up about 15 to 20% in the areas that went down, AKA your dense downtowns in Toronto and Vancouver, for example, right? The suburbs already saw their rental rates increase throughout the whole pandemic. Now, those condos that were largely abandoned during the early onset of the pandemic are now starting to see significant double-digit gains in the rental rates. So, the immigration is only going to further feed into that.
Yeah, and let me also point out that immigration is not the problem, right? The country requires immigration. We need employees. We have growing businesses. We don't have enough people here to feed that demand either. So we need the immigration. What's happened is we've neglected, or immigration was not talking to city planning, who weren't talking to developers about the massive wave of people that are coming. So again, it seems like a bunch of broken process that to me just isn't going to add up. We're just going to further deepen this issue.
Well, and think about this. So you're bringing in almost 4-to-1 people to existing homes. And yet you're saying one of your biggest platforms is to ban foreign investment, because that was less than 1% of all purchases all of last year. But that's the real problem. That's what's making prices go up.
We had the borders closed for 20 plus months. We ate into our own inventory. The reason we ate into all of our inventory, by the way, is because of fiscal monetary policy. We dropped interest rates to all-time lows. And smart money went in and used that additional funds they could get to amass assets. That's what's happened. And that kept the economy afloat. And politicians have to come out and say that, right? Instead, they're just saying, let's wag our finger at the foreign buyer who can't speak back because it's just a blanket statement. And they're the problem. They're the bad guy. I'll build some more houses. Come on.
Yeah, it's tough to watch. Let's say that. Just to kind of put a little bit more further context on the inventory issue, Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec are roughly half the quote unquote normal levels from the past decade, where, check this out, Ontario is by far the most pronounced, where their inventory is 1/3 of what it was between 2010 and 2016. One third.
That's probably due in part to price point, right?
Think about that. If you were shopping for a home in 2016 and you said, no, I'm not interested now, I'll wait, or whatever it was, or maybe you're just shopping now in comparison, you used to be able to look at 10 homes that were probably within your range. Now there's 3.
Jeez,
That's how
man,
pronounced it is in Ontario.
that is crazy.
Yeah.
That is absolutely crazy.
So understandably, right, with this massive decline in availability in the resale market, people are going to go and look at pre-sales. Unsold inventory in the pre-sale market is at a 10-year low because that inventory is getting snatched up as well. There are only 9,000 unsold pre-sale units across Canada today. Compare that to 18,000 in 2015. So very almost a verbatim story, right? 50% decline. It's a little bit more in resale, but again, very similar behaviors happening in the pre-sale market right now.
Yeah, and I think when you start to look at this macro picture, for the home buyers here that missed their opportunity or haven't got in because prices have gone up, have risen, you know, this isn't real estate agents or people in the market trying to drive, home prices up through a process of blind bidding or anything like that. We've been saying on this podcast for a year now that there has been systemic supply issues in the real estate market across Canada. And this points to that exactly. When prices continue to drive up and you look at the fact that there just are too many people for not enough houses, it's no wonder houses climb at exceptional rates. And this is what investors look at, right? So the data is available for everybody. And that's why we're putting this out here, because it's important to know that this is policy driven. And this started a decade ago.
That's
Anyways,
it, right?
I'm mad. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I can hear it. And that's great because a lot of people are. And they understandably are, right? The writing's been on the wall for a long time, right? This data didn't suddenly come out and shock everybody. The downward chart has been in existence for 10 years. So, why is it only kind of rearing its head today publicly? Again, I think neglect maybe is the right word there. Let's maybe jump a bit forward here, talk pricing. Because prices, they hit that 30-year high of 24.4% year over year gains just back in June. July was 22.2%. So what does that mean? It means the price gain percentages, they're decelerating kind of thing since January, but they're still going up. So instead of going up at an extreme rate, they're just going up at a more normalized rate.
Yeah, they've tapered.
They've tapered, exactly. Perfect word. So does that mean they're going to start going down? Well, very important that everybody understands this. We've never seen sustained monthly decline in housing prices with months of inventory less than 5. Okay, so you need 5 months of inventory consistently for prices to go down. We are currently at 2.3 months. So what does that mean? This means we need to see inventory either double today or sales cut in half before we can reasonably expect prices to decline.
I'm not sure either are going to happen.
Yeah, not anytime soon. No. And, let's be clear. This is national data. Of course, there's pockets where things are going to go down and other pockets that are going to go up, at an above average rate. But nationally speaking, we are about half of where we need to be for either sales or inventory.
So that being said, let's touch on our permanent residents here, because this is also a increasing number. And again, something that we need. Our economy absolutely needs immigration, right? We are not here to harp on that. We're actually doing a great job in terms of immigration. We just need the rest of the government to talk to each other so that there's places for these people to stay. Canada admitted a record number of permanent residents in July, 39,500. By comparison, June was 35,700, with a total at 184,000 so far this year. We are on track to hit the 401,000 goal.
That blows my mind. I remember, talking back March and April, and it felt like there was absolutely no way that number was feasible. And yet here they are, right? They are breaking their own records of how many PRs are being admitted into Canada, and they are looking to escalate that. It will be higher than 40,000 next month.
Yeah. Yeah. And it will be higher than 401,000 next year.
That's right.
That's the other thing to think, right? I mean, we're talking 1.2 million in the next 3 years, right?
Keep in mind too, the average permanent residents will rent for the first 2 years they are in Canada, or immigrant rather, and then they will purchase a home after that. That's the average. And of course, many wait until they have PR. Both Ryan and I have definitely worked with clients that they bought a home, honestly, within weeks, if not months, of getting that PR because they've been just waiting and waiting, and they obviously don't want to pay the foreign buyer tax.
Well, by the time they, are buying a home, they're keenly aware of what's happening in the real estate market, and they understand that you're undersupplied, upward pressure on price. If they don't get in now, it's only going to be more expensive in the years to come.
So
right?
they're saying we're going to ban foreigners, but we're going to fast track permanent residents.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. Like.
Oh, and we are not going to build anywhere near the amount of homes required to house either of them.
Yeah. But let's talk about what's being built, because it's not like there's a freeze out there, right? Building permits are being issued, so much so that rental building permits, in fact, are at an all-time high. They went up almost 9% just last month, and are sitting at about 290,000 for the last 12 months. Rental units, 290,000 applied for, or building permits in the last year.
These are permits, by the way. These are not houses.
Correct.
These are permits. So houses will come in the next 9 to 18, 24 months. Maybe. Correct. Depending on where you are.
Yes.
Could be a lot longer.
And even, looking at single family, those permits are at an 8-year high, sitting around 79,000 across Canada right now. So like Ryan touched on, permits do eventually translate into housing starts, with about, 3 to 6 month lag is the national number. Yes, we know things are a little longer out west. Currently, this sits around 286,000 housing starts today. For reference, back in 2020, the beginning, it was only about 200,000. So housing starts are drastically up. Again, houses take time to build. We're already the lowest amount of homes in the G7 per capita, and we're trying to play catch up. But then, of course, we're throwing in 400,000+ people per year on top of that. So it will just continue to lag and lag and lag.
A quick side note, Dan and I have someone we know who does asbestos remediation in the city of Vancouver. And to give you an idea of some of the permits and the duration it takes in order to get some of these permits going, his average just to remove asbestos in a home is 2 years to get a permit. So it's not like we don't have people here, and it's not always the job of the government to provide us with said housing. It's their job to allow us to do it. So, the backlog here, I know the Liberal Party has come out and said we're going to create a $4 billion fund to help municipalities across the nation with their backlog. I don't know, again, if that number is the right number. How is probably a bit more interesting as to what they're going to do, because I just don't know how we fix this. There's probably one guy dealing with this problem in Vancouver, and there should be 10. Vancouver's housing stock, generally speaking, is very old. So it should be, one of the departments that has the most people anyhow.
Mm-hmm. So we talked permits, we talked housing starts. What's actually under construction? Well, approximately 300,000 units are under construction right now. Keep in mind, a lot of these are towers that take upwards of 4 to 5 years to complete. But we're trending in the right direction in a sense. It was only 10 years ago where that number was about 150,000. So, dwellings under construction are surging. But again, it's mostly the condo homes that are being built. It's about 60% of the year-over-year increase in under construction inventory is actually rental construction alone. So there's a lot of rentals that are getting a lot of the permits and are being built right now. It's not the end user homes, it's rentals. Both are needed, but when we're talking about housing supply for end users being underbuilt, well, they're building more for rentals.
Which isn't going to help the average Canadian grow their wealth.
No, it makes the owners more wealthy.
That's right.
You know, but the rentals are needed. There's no doubt about it. But
For sure. For
again,
sure.
it's the end user supply that is the most drastically undersupplied today.
So what's the bottom line, Dan?
Well, we're still structurally under building single family homes and have for a long time. That hasn't changed in years. We're seeing at the same time what is potentially a cyclical oversupply of rental market. So, you know, that could end up weighing on rental prices. You know, again, it's like they're sort of overfeeding a need that isn't really there while undersupplying or underfeeding a need that really is there today. You know, a lot of these decisions take years to make, right? So of course you want to, let's say the rental market is so undersupplied, you're a developer, you want to supply a 500 unit tower. You make that decision, you commit to it, you wait 2-3 years for your permits, you build 4 or 5 years after that, 8 years between your decision and your final product. And a lot can change in the housing market, of course, in that time frame. So now things are likely shifting, and most permits I would expect are going to start to tend to be for end users. And then who knows where those are going to be in 8 years, right? It kind of cyclically changes, and it's a lot of the lag time in the building permits that, of course, can set these things on the wrong course early, if you know what I mean.
One of the other things that I should mention, that one of the, at least the Liberal Party has said they're going to do, is engage with partners to build rent to own stock, if you will. So homes that you would get a developer to agree to build, whereby they are going to set the rent for 5 years. A portion of that rent will be collected towards a down payment. And then they're going to somehow convince developers that in that 5-year time period, they have a set price to buy 5 years from the time of construction. Do you really think developers are going to get on board with this program when they have, one, other developments that they don't need to do this with? Two, when you have prices that rose 20, what percent, 24%, 22% year over year, why would a developer lock themselves out of that opportunity? They're there to make money, right? So I just don't understand, again, what's the point of building all of these rental units for people when we're talking about systemically undersupplying the future wealth of Canadians? It doesn't add up to me. And the ideas around building affordable homes, I mean, they're just that. I think they're ideas.
Yeah, these are not fully thought out ideas, it feels like, right? There's a headline, there's the lip service, but it's not entirely conceptualized, and it definitely does not sound like they are talking with the people that would actually be building these properties.
Like if they got a developer to stand up on the stage with him and say, I'm going to build the 5,000 units that he's talking about. Okay, well, now you've got my interest, right? But I'm not seeing any of that. I'm just seeing a bunch of promises. A lot of the platforms that I looked at online, I went through all of them. They're about 3 sentences long. And so my expectation is that a lot of this is for votes. Not a lot of it is actually going to take place. And I don't think you're going to see a huge change. I just unfortunately think that that's what's going to take place.
Yeah, no, I'm going to fully agree. I think history will rewrite itself. There will be promises. There will not be change, at least not to a degree that it's going to fundamentally affect pricing.
In the near term, anyways.
That's right. So let's give a quick example or vision of what we think is going to happen in the next few months here nationally. Big indicator of that is, of course, new mortgages, right? Credit growth is people applying for mortgages. It rose about 1.2% in June nationally. That is the strongest 1-month gain since 2007.
Wow.
It's also grown 9% year over year, which is the highest since 2009. And I think we all know what happened with prices moving from 2009 forward. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? It means people are applying for mortgages at the highest rate in over a decade. And 2 to 3 months later, they're going to be buying more homes. Mm-hmm. On top of that, insolvencies are 32% below June of 2019. So pre-pandemic. So people are paying down their credit cards, mortgages are all being paid. Everyone is a little flush with cash thanks to the overstimulus. Mm-hmm. And jobs. You ready for this one? There are 41% more job postings since before the pandemic. So
Holy cow.
in February of 2020, before the pandemic, there was X amount of jobs available. Today, there are 40% more.
And I would say 30% of those jobs, they probably can't find people for because they just don't want to go back to work.
Of course, that's exactly it, right? It's not like that much new jobs have been created. It's the jobs that were left are not being refilled.
That's right. And I think that was a bit of an anticipated factor. We knew attrition rates would be a little bit higher. Once everybody started working from home, it's very difficult to self-regulate. Employers were getting a bit more of an advantage of productivity because they were squeezing more hours out of people. That has in turn led to a bit of a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths. And that's why employers are now struggling to find workers now that the economy is reopening.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of people that I personally know that were, let's say, in a service industry, having the time away from work and being financed to do so, a lot of people explored their side hustle, found other interests, and created new jobs for themselves.
I like that
as well,
Yeah.
like a high number. So I think a lot of people, given the opportunity, given time, and given a bit of financial security, if you will, explored their personal interests and have created new jobs and are actually employing other people now. So
that's fascinating, and
Yeah.
I love that that's happening. But generally speaking, when we're looking at prices across the nation, at least in the short run here, I don't see them getting better in the short run, in terms of going down, right?
Yeah, statistically speaking, it's not going to happen. It's never happened with inventory this low. So we don't expect it to in the near term, again, unless something fundamentally drastic or huge changes, and we'll address it if it does. But looking forward today, you can expect a fall season where prices will increase, not at the rate they did over the last year, but I think we will see steady inclines in prices across all three asset classes.
And don't think that we're all of a sudden going to have 1.4 million homes in the next 3 years. Just know that at least if we can get some of the housing starts up to around double what they are now, that would be really cool. Or if we could double the amount of permits, we could reduce the time for permits by, at least half. I think those things would fundamentally start to make an impact, but they're going to take 2 to 3 years before we'll see any of that.
Well, one can dream. All right, that's where it starts. All right, well, thank you as always for watching and listening. This has been the Vancouver Life Real Estate Podcast and YouTube channel. If you're enjoying this, please, we do it every week for you guys. Please subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our new episodes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.